this presentation. This one is how to make infographics for learning, and it's featuring PowerPoint. The thing that I love about PowerPoint is that, and really just any sort of slide presentation tool whatsoever, is that it's way more than a simple oral presentation tool. You know, it's more than just like, hey, let's take some presentation slides and put them up on the screen and have the kids do oral reports, or for us to, you know, stand up there and lecture. There's lots of things that we can do with it, and infographics are just one of them. So super excited to get to talk about this. Infographics are kind of my jam. I I joke with people sometimes that infographics are my love language. Like if I can communicate something in an infographic, that is my favorite way to do it. So anyway, wanted to jump right into this. And before we start, I'm going to stop sharing my screen real quick so that I can see my face for just a moment. So hopefully mine is the only webcam that is on right now. Hopefully it's on your screen. And so just so you can see my face, hey, this is what I look like. One thing you might notice if you've got my face on your screen is if you click on it, there are three little dots. And if you click on the three little dots next to my name, there's an option that says pin. So depending on the platform that you're using, you may have this option. I'm going to suggest that you pin my face, which sounds kind of painful and weird, but we're going to roll with it. So go ahead and pin my face so that my slides and my webcam are always available. And by the way, if you've just joined us, I do ask you to turn off your webcam and mute your microphone. I think everybody's got their microphones muted, which is good. But yeah, please do turn those webcams off while we're doing the presentation. And if you get a chance to pin my face with the three dots, then that is definitely helpful. So, okay. So with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and put my slides back up here. So hopefully you have pinned my face now, which does make things a little bit easier. And let's get going. So one thing, there are a couple of quick things that I wanted to share with you before we dive into the meat and potatoes of this presentation. So one of them is this. If you're looking for lots of free templates that you can use to assign to your students, these are things that you can download. They're in slide presentations. They're in PowerPoint, and you can download them and assign them to your students. I've got a whole bunch of free ones at this link right here. So you can go to ditchthattextbook.com/PowerPoint-templates. And so, in fact, I'm going into the chat real quick. PowerPoint-templates. There we go. And so, yeah, feel free to go there, and there are a whole bunch of templates that you can download. In fact, one of them that I'm going to demonstrate here is an template that saves you and your students some time when creating them. And so you can go get that and some other variations of it at this site. So I wanted to make sure that you had that. And then there's also this that I wanted to share with you. If you go to ditchthattextbook.com/101, I've got some free stuff for you. So in that spot at ditchthattextbook.com/101, I've got these 3 free ebooks. Okay, I see in the chat that you guys are saying that I'm heavily buffering, that I'm in and out, and we know that there's some buffering. This is the best that I think my internet connection is going to be able to handle. So I'm going to roll with it. I'm going to hope that it clears up. We've got everybody off of my internet that we can. No, we do have everybody off the internet. So this is going to be the best that we can do. I'm going to encourage everybody to mute your microphones too, and to keep your webcam turned off. And it looks like everybody's got their webcams off, so that's good. Okay, we're going to try to manage this as best as possible. So let me get back to this real quick. You can get these 3 free ebooks with practical ideas that you can use in your class and a whole bunch of downloadable free templates by going to ditchthattextbook.com/101. And so if you do that, that also gets you signed up for my email newsletter, where I'm sharing a whole bunch of a whole bunch of free resources and ideas just like these. So I wanted to make sure that you knew about those couple of things. So, with that, let's start diving into this presentation a little bit. And when I'm talking about infographics, these are the kinds of things that I'm talking about. These are some of the ones that I've created myself recently and then shared out on social media to help teachers out. This is one that I did after a live video with an online teacher sharing ways to build student relationships. And so you can see how it's real sequential. It's got some numbers and some little icons in it. This is another one that I did to talk about a new feature in Microsoft Teams. And so I pulled in a screenshot and again, a whole bunch of icons. I'm a huge fan of icons, if you can't tell. And those are going to be a big part of this presentation, actually. And then here's another one that I just did recently about my my new book, Tech Like a Pirate. And so with this, I just did another big blend of images and text all together with a background. And so these are the kinds of things that I'm going to be showing you how to do on this webinar. So so this is kind of the big question that I think that we'll tackle when we're talking about using infographics in the classroom. And the question is, how can they, the students, show what they know with images and text? How can they show what they know with images and text? Because you see, there are lots of ways to have students demonstrate their understanding, to have them demonstrate what they know and what they've learned. And I think sometimes we get kind of a narrow focus on how we want students to do that. We think, okay, we'll have them write an essay to talk about it, or we'll have them answer some multiple choice questions or fill in the blanks or something like that. Part of the idea of infographics is, what if they can show what they know with these infographics instead, which are, which blend images and text really nicely, but they're also super brain friendly too. And so I wanted to touch on that for just a second, that there is lots of, I'm going to try to toggle between sharing my screen and letting you get to see my face. So there is lots of research behind the power of using images and text together. I'll throw a couple of things out real quick, just so if you're interested in it, you can go dig it up. There's this thing called picture superiority effect that talks about how powerful it is for our brains to encode things in our memory if we see them in pictures, and how much more powerful an image is than text sometimes. Then there's also this thing called dual coding theory, tells us that our brains encode information differently when it comes in by text and when it comes in by images. You know, our brain processes images and text completely differently. And so when it does that, if we can encode it through both, if we can bring in text and bring in images, it makes this real nice, sticky, long-term learning. And so what's great about infographics is that you're able to blend the images and the text together for that real sticky learning. And so that's really what we're looking at here. So that's the big question. How can they show what they know with images and text? Now, when it comes to making infographics, let me give you a fantastic absolute that's not an absolute. Planning is everything. And when I say that, that means having a good plan for what you want to put in your infographic, or having your students put in their infographic, is important. So knowing what kinds of facts and what kinds of images they want to use is super important, with the caveat, until it isn't. I realized that I wanted to say planning is everything. And then I thought about the way that I create infographics. And sometimes I start one and the text isn't fitting where I want it to, or the images just aren't big enough and I need to move them around, or I realize there's a better way to organize. And so I'm kind of shuffling things around the whole time. And so I'd say having a good plan, it's kind of like that old quote. If you're familiar with it, it's that, what is it? That failing to plan is planning to fail, I think. And even if I think even if we don't follow our plan, it's still important to have a plan. And so that's something that I would encourage students to do as they make these. And then let's go to one more real quick. let's talk about the types of infographics. And then after this, I'm going to be doing a whole bunch of demo. So you're going to get to see what it looks like to create these kinds of things. And so there are several types of infographics. These are just 4 of them that I came up with. And then there are lots of other ways to do it too. One is the numbered and sequential type of infographic. In fact, that was the one that we saw here. This is an example of a numbered infographic. So it's like 10 ways, or 10 things, list 10 things, or give the 10 steps, or something like that. There are chronological ones too. And of course you can arrange by time and date instead of, just numbering something. There's also scattered ones. I bet you've probably seen some of these before, where there's just a whole bunch of random facts and they're just kind of scattered all throughout the infographic. Sometimes those make for a really neat visual effect, but sometimes they just kind of look cluttered. And so it's, I've found, for me at least, it's hard to do scattered infographics really well, but it's possible. It's possible to do. And then there's also labeling. Like if you take an image and stick it in the background, or take an image and stick it onto your infographic, there are things that you can add on top of it to label it. And so lots and lots of different ways that you can do these infographics. And so without further ado, I think we're going to jump right into some examples of some infographics. Now, the reason that I mention PowerPoint here is because I really think that PowerPoint is a powerful tool for creating these kinds of things. Sometimes people think of PowerPoint and other slide presentation tools as just presentation tools. It's stuff that you're going to stick them up on the, on the projector screen, and you're going to flip through your slides and you're going to talk. But I found that some of the most powerful ways to use it are when you take just one single slide like this. And you'll notice that I'm building out this infographic in PowerPoint with one slide, and I'm using this one slide as if it was my paper. And so with that, I'm going to start just sort of slowly building things into my infographic so that, so you can see some of the different ways that you do it. So I sort of preloaded this one with a couple of the types of things that I would add onto it. Now, if you remember from earlier that I had that numeric infographic. In fact, let me see if I can throw that back up on the screen real fast. So just to use this as kind of an example, a starting off point, coming up with a list of 10 things, coming up with little images to go with them, and then a little line of text to go with each one. That's a pretty easy construct to follow. And that's something that your students are probably, depending on their age and depending on their practice with it, it's something that they could probably pick up pretty quickly, I'll bet. And so I wanted to show you just a couple of the things that I did to make that kind of infographic to start. So I'm going to move these out of the way for the moment. They'll come back. And so to start this out, I wanted to make this numbered circle. For me, I'm real big on the circles for whatever reason. And one of the most powerful things I've found to help me create these infographics is the shapes option in PowerPoint. Now, let me tell you one thing about the version of PowerPoint that you're seeing on the screen. This is the PowerPoint Online. This is PowerPoint Online and not the desktop app. So if your students are working with Microsoft tools, there's probably a pretty good chance that, unless they're using a Windows device and they have all of the apps installed, there's a good chance that they may end up working with the online version. So I thought I would demo with this for a little while, and then I'm going to switch over to the desktop app after a little bit so that you can see what that looks like too. So there are some differences. The online version doesn't have quite as many features, but of course it is accessible anywhere that you can open it in a web browser, which is really nice. So anyway, back to the infographic. I was talking about these numbered circles, right? So this is one of my favorite ways to do these little number tags, and that is to go to Insert, Shapes. Now these shapes right here, I can't say enough for the shapes whenever you're trying to build something like this. And I use these shapes all the time for different things. And so what's nice about this is You know, for instance, with this one, I picked the oval, which of course you can change into just a, you know, a perfect circle. But you have all sorts of different shapes that you can use for a variety of reasons. In fact, you saw one of the block arrows on my very first slide when I was asking you to mute your microphone and turn off your webcam. I used one of those block arrows. We'll get into a little bit more of these as we go. But for right now, I'm going to click on the oval. Notice that it popped one up right there. And once it's there, there are a lot of things that we can change to it. Now, what's nice about this is that if you click on this shape menu right here, it gives you lots of options. So for instance, these are probably the two that I use the most, is that I like to change the fill color. Notice the fill color is blue right now. You could change it to just about any color that you want, or you can kind of create your own color if you want to. You can make a kind of a purple color like that. And then in addition to that, you can also change the outline. And so I really like, and I think you saw this on this example right here, I really like to do kind of like two tones of my color, or two tones of my colors with kind of a darker outline and then a lighter fill. So in this case, I have the purple fill, and then I could go to the outline, and I could go to more outline colors. And of course, we've got the purple color, right? So I'm going to drag it down so it's a little bit darker and hit OK. And then the other thing you've got to do with the outline too is that you want to change the size of it. Do you notice on my number over here that the outline is a little bit thicker? You want to come down to the weight, and that's what that is. So I'm going to change that to 4.5 point, and then you can finally see that outline. So these are some of the little things. Sometimes I feel like with these features, like these little things I'm showing you, sometimes people look at these and they're like, why didn't anybody tell me that? Why didn't anybody share that with me? These are some of those little hidden features that sometimes you don't realize. The other thing that's cool about these shapes is that if you double click on them, or you can see the little text cursor thing right here, you can click on that and you can add a text box to it. So another neat thing about these shapes is that there are built-in text boxes to them. Did you all know that? I bet some of you probably knew that. So that's where I'll type in the number 1. You know, I'll make this one bold. And now we've got one of those movable numbers, just like the ones up above. And of course, you don't have to stick to a circle, of course, either. You know, you can change the shape. So in this case, if I click the shape button right here, I could switch it and I can make it a rounded rectangle instead. And see, I would just add it as a rounded rectangle instead, and I could go through and change all those same things on it. So, all right, so that's how that works. Now, let me show you a quick time-saving tip if you're making these. So we've got the number 1 right here. Notice that on my examples up here, I've also got a number 2. And so instead of just going to insert a brand new shape, check out how I'm going to do this. I'm going to take this and I'm going to use a keyboard command. I am a big keyboard shortcut nerd, folks. I'm just going to admit it. I love a good keyboard shortcut, and I'm going to share a few of them, a few of my favorites in this session with you. But this is definitely one that I use a lot with infographics. And the keyboard shortcut is Control D. Control D as in duplicate. Control D, and notice it just makes a perfect copy of that one little circle right there. Now, yeah, you could use Control C for copy and Control V for paste. You could totally do that. That's fine. I just like to use it because it's simple. You know, not 2 keyboard commands, 1 keyboard command. And so once that's over there, now I can just use the text and I can change it to a 2. And so there's that. Now, when it comes to duplicating, let me show you another ninja trick that I use whenever I make these infographics. I'm going to highlight all of the pieces of this one selection. And so this is going to include the number and the icon and the text. Now, when you're highlighting in PowerPoint, one thing you want to be careful of is that your highlight box, I'm just clicking and dragging here, you want your highlight box to go around the outside of all of the things that you want to select. So notice it's kind of overlapping on my 2 and on my second text box. That doesn't matter because it's not encompassing it completely. Now watch this. I took these three things right here. I'm going to use that same keyboard command, Control D, to duplicate. And notice it has taken all three of those items. And now we can move this over here. And so that's going to speed the process up some. Now, of course, you can continue that just as much as you want. So watch this. I'm going to take all of these, all three of these, Control D to duplicate, move them down here, and then watch this. Take the whole thing all over again, Control D to duplicate. Oh my goodness, look at that. We just made a 12-item infographic. And now what do we got to do? All we've got to do is go in and change the numbers, change the icons, change the text. Boom, we're done. And the nice thing about that too is that preserves all of the spacing in between everything. So now it looks nice and neat and organized, which I totally love. I just blew Gabriel's mind. He says, wow. Maria asks a good question. She says, do you have an infographic for your favorite shortcuts? I think that's a brilliant idea. Why have I never thought to do that? I totally need to make one of those. And Anna Mae's like, yeah, that would be great. I hope he has one. I need to make one. So yeah, that's totally good. Linda asks in here, can you change the graphic too? Yes, absolutely. So let's talk about those graphics for just a second. And so, okay, now I'm getting lots of as for the infographics. I'm gonna have to make one of these here in the next couple of days. You all have my interest now. So, okay, so we don't want a whole bunch of 3D glasses through this whole thing, right? Chris asked real quick, does that duplicate feature auto group the items? No, it doesn't auto group them. Although what you could do is you could highlight. See, I'm just gonna hold in the Shift key and I'm gonna click all three of these together. And then under, I think it's under Arrange. Where is it? If somebody knows what I'm looking for here, I'm looking to group. In fact, let me just right click and there's group. That's probably the easiest way to do it, is right click and then group it. And then now, see, watch this. If I duplicate it, the next one is grouped. So Chris mentioned, does that duplicate auto group the items? No, but it would have been smarter for me to go ahead and group them all together so they would stay together in one little bit. So yeah. Okay, glad that he brought that up. That's good. So let's talk real quick about these images. So for me, when I started making infographics, I was using another slide presentation tool from another company that shall remain nameless. And one of the things that I found is that they didn't have a big library of icons. And so I found a place that had a whole bunch of these icons that I could download. And so I'm going to share that with you real quick. And then after I do that, I'm going to share with you where to find a bunch of icons that are already built into PowerPoint. This is one of my favorite features of PowerPoint, is the icons. So here's the site, the Noun Project. Noun, N-O-U-N, like the Noun Project. Icons for everything, over 2 million icons curated by a global community. And so what's neat about this site is that you can get all of these icons. Like for instance, one of the ones that I use a bunch is the light bulb. And so I always use light bulbs for ideas and for inspiration. I feel like the light bulb is the most common icon that I use for everything. So, so anyway, you can see some examples of that. Oh, I just saw this over in the chat. Jen was asking, can you group in Google Slides? And yes, I'm allowed to talk about Google Slides in this session. Don't worry. I know it is sponsored by Microsoft, but if you ask questions, hey, I'm going to answer them. So yes, you can group in Google Slides also, and it looks kind of the same. You just highlight all the things that you want to group together, and then you should be able to right click and group as well. So yep, good question. And then Maria just mentioned autodraw.com is handy. Yes, absolutely. It is absolutely handy. Go click on that link in the chat if you want to go check out AutoDraw as well. So I had a quick question. I'll just hit this real fast. Here's a good link to, you said, oh, can you provide the site again? That was for the Noun Project. So yeah, it's a shame that they don't have it up here. Let me type it here because you'll be able to see it up here, right? There it is, thenounproject.com. That's the site that I'm on right now that has all of the links. Now, here's the thing with the Noun Project. You can use the icons for free, but you have to give attribution. And the Noun Project kind of walks you through how to do that. You download the icon and it tells you what to write as the attribution, and you just have to include that text somewhere in your infographic. So usually I'll just make a little text box at the very bottom of my infographic and stick it in there. However, with the Noun Project, I'm a Noun Pro member. So I paid the what is it, like 30 or 40 bucks or 60 bucks or something a year. As an educator, I think you get 50% off. And so by doing that, I don't have to provide attribution on mine. So when I showed you the one over here, see down here, I do have a little bit of text, a little bit of attribution, full video interview available here, infographic by me. But I didn't put anything about the attribution because I'm a Noun Pro member and I paid for, for that part. So, so anyhow, there's that. Oh, good. And some of you have stuck the Noun Project link in there. That's super helpful. By the way, if anybody is watching and I mention a link or something and I don't put it up there on the screen, whenever you help out and put it in the chat, that's always amazing. So anyway, you can download these icons and you can stick them into your infographics. And that's a good enough solution, but I want to show you my favorite solution. I'm going to make before I show you that real quick, I'm going to remind everybody, because some of you probably have shown up late and didn't get a chance to see my initial slide, that if we get a chance to mute our microphones and turn off our webcams, that is the preferred way to go. So anyway, like I was saying, for those icons, here's my favorite. Some of you have probably already seen it and you're like, come on, just give it to us, Matt. And it is the icon tab. And so here's one of the things that I love about PowerPoint is that it has like thousands and thousands of built-in icons. So you don't even have to leave the app. You can just go and find one. So I was looking at light bulbs earlier. So we've got several versions of light bulbs. The other thing that I like about this too is that they're all of these icons are kind of in the same style. Now, when you go to something like the Noun Project, you start to see, in fact, you can kind of see it over here. There are lots of different styles of light bulbs. You've got thicker light bulbs like this one. You've got thinner ones like this. You've got sketchy ones like this. You've got narrow and drawn in like this. You've got all of these different versions. With this, you kind of stick by the same style. And so that makes the whole thing kind of look uniform as you're adding these icons. Randa asked if the icons are available in the desktop version. Yes, they are. If it's available in the online version, it's probably available in the desktop version since the desktop is a little more robust. That's a great question. So, so anyway, I was on these examples. It's real easy then, of course, to to switch these out and add new ones. So that kind of shows you how this whole sequential one could look. This is a pretty simple way to be able to do that. So adding a number and an icon and some text is a pretty easy way to do this. There's a couple of we've got some questions about the icons in the desktop version. So I'm going to go to insert and there's icons right there. That's where it looks like in the desktop version. If you build in a PowerPoint, can you change it into a Google slide? If so, do the icons transfer? I think so. I haven't tried to do that with the PowerPoint icons, but I think that they get stuck onto the PowerPoint as an image. And then whenever you save it as a PowerPoint file and then upload it into Google Drive, I think it will save those icons. Haven't tried it, but I'm pretty sure that it will. Good question. So, okay. So anyway, we talked about ways that we can do these numbered, these numbered ones. And the reason that I like this is that you've got to take all of these steps. And in this case, I've built in kind of a small text box. And so I'm kind of like constraining myself to a short amount of text. And I think that one thing that infographics teach whenever students create them is brevity and clarity. So they have to get ideas across in a short amount of words and as clear and concise as possible. And so that's another reason that I really love it. You know, in a world where in lots of social media posts, we can talk for as long as we want, and we can put as much text as we want in a document, and we can go on and on in a video. Infographics make you be concise. And so that also makes it really good for the reader too. So I think that that is, yep, I'm with you, Jen. That's a great skill. So, so there's that. Now let's talk about some other things we can put in infographics. And by the way, after I wrap this next part up, I'm going to start throwing it out to all of you. So I want you to start thinking about how you think this could translate over into a class. Don't put it in the chat yet. I want to be able to see them, but just start thinking about that, how you think this could translate over into a class. Hakelina, if I said that correctly, just asked how to add the number shape again. So I'll do that real fast. You go to shapes. I made a circle. And so for me, I clicked on the circle one and then it popped in right here. And then from there, all I did was see if you click on the shape tab right here, you can change the fill. Let's see, which one was the fill color? It's this one. You can change the fill color to whatever you want it to be. You can change the outline. And then the other thing I did with the outlines was I changed the weight of them. The weight is the width of your outline. And so I just did that. And then you can double click it to get a text box. And so I put in the number 1 there, Control B to make it bold. Ooh, I was mentioning keyboard shortcuts, right? Okay, I'm going to nerd out about keyboard shortcuts again for a second, because I'm going to tell you one that I use every single day that I'll bet there's a decent chance some of you don't know. So you're going to love this one, I think, just as much as I do when you learn about it. Watch this. Do you see the text in my number 1 over here in this little red circle? So from there, I look at that number 1 and I go, you know, it's kind of small. I wish I could make it bigger. And what a hassle is it whenever you have to come over here to the home button and you got to click on the number and you go 20. No, that's not big enough. 48. No, that's way too big. And you got to just keep kind of clicking through the numbers, right? Let's make that faster. Here's the keyboard shortcut. You ready for this? You might want to write this down because this is a really good one, okay? All right, here's the keyboard shortcut. I hold in Control and Shift, and I push the period key. I'm going to give you a trick for how to remember this in a second. Control Shift, and I push the period key, and watch what happens when I push the period key. Control Shift, period, 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 and it jumps and becomes bigger, 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 period, period. And can you guess what key I push to make it smaller, smaller, smaller? Anybody have any ideas? I push Control, Shift, and what is it? Watching the chat to see if anybody wants to throw it in there and see if they can guess it. Lauren's got it. Michael's got it. I'm about to show it to you. I want to see if anybody else puts it in there. They got it. I know some others of you will too. Gabriel's got it. It is comma. Control, Shift, comma. Makes it smaller. Comma. Makes it smaller. Comma. Makes it smaller. So hold in that Control, Shift, and use the period and comma key. Now, how in the world are you going to remember period and comma? Look down at your keyboard and notice what's above the comma and above the period. Yep, Lauren's got it. She knows it too. It's the greater than and less than sign. So you go Control Shift, greater than, greater than, greater than, makes it bigger, bigger, bigger. And yes, I'm seeing C. Shaw asked, is the dot the period key? Yes. I forget that sometimes those are, you know, in different dialects and different ways that we speak the language, that doesn't always cross over. So, so Control Shift, period, Control Shift, comma makes those bigger and smaller. That's one of my absolute favorite shortcuts. It works across lots of platforms, not just in PowerPoint. So keep that one filed away. Okay. So we're going to talk about some other things that we can do. One of the things I like to do with these infographics is I like to get creative with the icons. And in fact, I just saw in the chat a minute ago, someone was saying that they liked how you could customize the icons in the Noun Project. And that made me think of this and made me remember to mention this. Cheryl asked if all my favorite shortcuts are in my books. No, but that would have been pretty smart. Make like a, maybe I need to do that in the future. If I write another book, I'm going to have like a glossary of favorite shortcuts at the back of it. I'm going to remember that because you all suggested it. So one of the things I like to do with icons is I like to do what I call anyway, icon art. That doesn't mean you have to be like super artsy or anything, but what it does mean is that you don't have to use the icons the way that they are. And so, for example, what you're seeing on the screen right here is kind of an example of that. This is making one of those little charts of statistics. And so if you want to do 5 out of 10 people, all I did was I took a icon of a person and I stuck it on here, and then I just duplicated it and stuck them right next to each other, right? Then, and this is one of the nice features of PowerPoint too, is that I highlighted all of these little icons right here, and under the graphics tab, if you're not noticing these tabs that pop up here whenever you select something, sometimes you're missing out on your best options to customize something. Because notice what it says over here, graphics fill. That means I can change the fill color of the icon. And watch what it does. See how it turned them red? 5 out of 10 people. You see how that works? And so then, of course, you could just highlight all of that and we could duplicate it. And now if we wanted to make it not out of, let me see if I can get this to move, not out of 10 people, but if we wanted to make it out of 20 people, I didn't do a very good job of duplicating that, so I'm just going to undo it. You can see how that works, right? Now, let's take that a step further. What if, let's say, for instance, I wanted to create I wanted an icon that showed a drive-in theater with 3D glasses. So one thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to borrow this one for just a second, move it over here. See, I'm going to take this icon, I'm going to make it a little bit bigger, and then I'm going to steal one of these 3D glasses and stick it in the middle. And you see how I'm using those icons together? Sometimes if one of them doesn't have exactly what you want, you can combine 2 or 3 of them together, and then we'll use that same feature that we talked about earlier. I'm going to highlight both of them. I'm going to right click it and I'm going to group them. And now that's going to act as if it is one singular icon. And see, now I can resize it. By the way, little pro tip, whenever you're resizing so that it doesn't get out of proportion like this, hold in the shift key. Bigger, smaller, bigger, smaller. Now it stays in proportion. And then I can just take this and I can move it over here. Ooh, that's kind of big. Let's make it a little smaller. So kind of see some of the possibilities when it comes to this. Laura asked about participation certificates. This was something we mentioned earlier, that we're still working on a solution to do participation certificates, but we don't have one right now. So, yep. Danielle got it. You know what? I just need to let you guys handle some of this stuff, not feel like I have to answer all of these questions. So, one other quick thing that I want to share with you is if you want to do a quote, check this out. This is something that you can add into your infographics too. And this one has to do with shapes again. And so notice this kind of looks like a little speech bubble. And then I put an important quote. This is an important quote about movies. Clearly really important because some person said it. All I did here was I went to insert a shape. And remember we talked about the circle shapes and how I used an arrow shape earlier. If we scroll down a little bit, check this out. This is one of my favorite ones of the shapes. You have 3 different speech bubbles and you have a cloud call out, which is like a thought bubble. So if I click on one of those, see, watch, I can resize that. I'm going to hold in shift so it keeps the same proportions. And then I'm going to double click in the inside of it. And this is another quote, or maybe just what I'm thinking. Lots of possibilities when it comes to all of these. Now check this out too. This is another fun thing that you can do with your infographics. Is this if you insert a picture, and this is going to be an actual picture. So let's go to my pictures, and I'm going to go to my camera roll, and let's find, there's a picture of me being a goofball and acting like I'm thinking. So I'm going to make that picture a little bit bigger, and watch this. Oh, wait. Did you notice how that shape just went behind my picture? That means that the shape is behind it. So I'm just going to right click it and I'm going to bring it to the front so that it goes to the front of the image. And so like I bring this in. And so now this can be another thing that you add to it as a picture. And you can even overlay one of these little thought bubbles on it. Now check this out. This is kind of a neat, I think it's going to let me do this. Maybe it's not. Sometimes you can take with these shapes. Sometimes you can change different things inside of them. So in this case, I thought I was going to be able to move the little tail of the thought bubble over to my head, but it looks like I'm not able to do that. But what I can do is I can right click it. Is this where I want to do this? It's under. No, that's okay. You kind of get the idea, right? Reflect it. Yeah, that's, yep. Becca knew what I was thinking. That's what I'm trying to do. I can rotate the image. Yes. See, I could do it like this. And so that could work. I'm trying to remember with this how I can flip that. Isn't there a mirror? Yes, there is one somewhere. I'm trying to figure out where it is. Under view, I think view is, yeah, that's just viewing the entire thing. See, this is me being real with you all. See, I know where a lot of this stuff is, but every once in a while something gets lost on me and I can't quite remember where it is. So I'm hoping that maybe that makes you feel a little bit better about yourselves, that, you know, if this happens to you too, you're not the only one. Will it flip the words as well? We're about to find that out. You know what? Let me just skip past that and let's figure that out another time. How about that? Okay, because I got some other stuff that I want to get to. Right click, format on the image. We'll check that real quick. I can see outline, fill, and style, but that's about it. So I don't think so. Okay, let's leave it. Let's just leave it, okay? All right, so you're starting to see some possibilities when it comes to infographics, right? So I'm going to turn my screen off for just a second, and I'm going to turn on my camera and start looking at the chat. And so here's what I'd like to ask you about. You've seen a whole bunch of these examples when it comes to putting infographics together. You can use some of the icons, you can use some of the text, you can put the little quotes in, you can use icons together. You know, there's all sorts of possibilities. Let me ask you, how could you see this being used in a classroom? Like maybe whatever it is that you teach, or you know, really something else. What are some possibilities when it comes to that? So I'd love for you to throw some of those into the chat, and I'm going to shout out some of those ideas. But I'll share with you a couple of the things that I thought of when it comes to this. Did you notice when I put that picture on the screen, I was able to put the thought bubble on top of it? I was talking about annotating images as an example of an infographic. So imagine you put an image in the back, like right onto the slide. And then you start putting some of the icons. Maybe even it's an icon with a little pointing finger like this. Or maybe you put an image of a map and you have a pin that you can drop onto that map. Then you're able to highlight different things. You could even use one of the shapes. You remember the arrow shapes I was telling you about? You could use one of those arrow shapes and draw it in. And remember, with each of the shapes, if you double click it, there's a text box in it. And so the students could use those arrows to highlight certain things and then label them by typing it into the text box. So that's definitely a possibility. When I was teaching high school Spanish, we would come up with a whole bunch of stories. We would use those to practice our vocabulary words. And so when we were done, I would have students retell it in their own words. And I wasn't really a big infographic person at the time, but I could totally see making an infographic to tell like the different parts of the story, put a little text, put a little image in there. And those would be really fun for other students to go check out too. Oh, you've got lots of things over here. This is great. Let's go down through some of these real fast. Timelines, Tyler says. Yes, absolutely. Just make a line at the bottom, and then you can have arrows pointing to the different parts of the line. Add little icons and text with each of those arrows to show what it is that you're talking about. And even below the line, you can put the time, you know, like the years from the beginning to the end. This would be great for storytelling, Gabriel says. Yes, definitely. How-to instructions. Yeah, just step by step by step. And you can even add some little screenshots into those as well. Spanish conversations, claro que sí. I totally agree with that. That would be great. Lab safety posters, that's great. And you know, Lauren mentioned lab safety posters. How cool would it be if you had lab safety posters created by the students instead of ones that you bought from someplace? If you actually had like student created ones and put them up in different places around the room and just pick some of the exemplary ones. Clickable links for primary students. And see, Dana's getting into something that I didn't even get into. You can take any of those items on the screen. That could be your little icons or your text or whatever, and turn it into a clickable link. So if somebody loads it up in PowerPoint, now it becomes an interactive infographic. Let me let you wrap your brain around that. Interactive infographics is pretty cool. Adding statistics for a specific disease in my pathophysiology class. Yep. Totally. Yeah. With statistics, these are great for that. Students creating directions or steps in doing ceramic building techniques. Yes. And Michael, I saw earlier that you were a ceramics teacher, and I was starting to think, oh man, for step-by-step instructions, this would be perfect for him. So that's great. Arnold says, I do infographics for student data from scientific inquiry. Yeah, absolutely. So you gather that data and then all of the insights that you've gotten, you put it into an infographic. I love this. Jen says, I think it would be fun to have the kids make a top 10 about themselves for the first week of school for introductions. Yes, love that. And then experimentation with infographics. Then that way they have kind of a low stakes way of trying it out. So I love student how-to tutorials, student retells, summaries, character maps, creating classroom rules and guides. These are all really good. Have students label different parts of the body. Yep. Different parts of the solar system, different parts of an atom. I mean, just any of that stuff. Using steps of how food passes through the digestive tract. Yes. Grab a diagram of the digestive tract and then have them label the different parts of it. Totally love that. That's great. Procedural, comic strips. Man, you all have put some really good stuff in here. Keep, just scan down through these. I bet some of you probably have. Biographical information for historical figures, the life cycle, social stories, creating career posters. Okay, we've got a couple questions in here. Haven't read these yet. So do you happen to have a general rubric that we could use with students? I don't have a rubric. My take on rubrics has always been, and I don't consider myself an expert on rubrics at all, but my take on it has always been, I want to reward in the rubric the things that I want kids to focus on. So I would think about what are the 3 or 4 things that you really want them to focus on. So if I were doing a rubric for an infographic, I would talk about the quality of the information. I would talk about how representative the icons are to the infographic itself. I would talk about the completeness of ideas. Did they get the whole thing across? Clarity, brevity, any of that stuff would be important to me in an infographic. And so those are some of the things that I would put into a rubric. Hopefully that's helpful. And then how do you save these as images? I always forget little things like this. That's such an important question. So thank you, Maria, for asking that. How do you save this as an image? Let's go back to the screen and I'll show you. Okay, so within PowerPoint, let's say we're done with this infographic. I mean, look at this infographic. Isn't it like perfect? I mean, what else would you ever want to change to this infographic? It has, what is it? It's got like 8 number 1s and 4 number 2s and a whole bunch of the same. It's perfect. So let's say that it got done and you wanted to save it as an image. And so what you want to do here is go to File, and you want to go to Save a Copy. This is a little bit different than it is. No, let's go to Share. Oh my goodness, I've always done this as, no, there it is. It's Download As. I probably look like such a fool doing this. I've only always done this on the desktop version, and now I'm trying to do it on the online version. There it is. So on the online version, we're going to download as an image. And then we click on that and it's going to save and then it's going to download. And then we're going to see probably at the bottom, it's saved into a zip file. And then I can unzip it and grab that image out. If I were in the desktop version, but I've always done it with the desktop version, is in the desktop version, I'm going to go to Save As. And you might be able to export it as an image. I'm still sort of learning some of this stuff. I think Save As is the best way to do it. And then so you want to share, you want to figure out you want to save it to. In this case, I'll just save it to my PC. And so you give it a file name. So in this case, it is Practice Infographic. And then we don't want to save it as a PowerPoint presentation, do we? We want to save it as an image. And so we're going to come down here. Here are two different kinds of image files that you might try, a JPEG or a PNG. Both of those are different image files. I always do PNGs with mine, portable network graphics. The thing I like about that is if you have anything that's transparent in your image, it saves that transparency. So I brought it down as a PNG. This says Practice Infographic, and then I can hit save. And then it's going to ask me, which slides do you want to export? Which is basically asking which ones do you want to change into an image? And I'm just going to say just this one. And so now it has saved it to my computer, and then I can see that if I pull this up and I go to my, I don't think it's in my downloads. I think it's saved in my documents. That's another thing. Yep, there it is right there, Practice Infographic. And so then it's saved right there. It's an image file, and I can go do whatever I want with it, really. So that's a good thing. Let's see. The question from Michelle, clickable links are preserved when you download as an image. No, that's a great question. If you want to do the clickable links, it isn't preserved when you download it as an image. However, Luz Maria beat me to it. I can't even get it out of my mouth fast enough. If you save it as a PDF, it is. She is exactly right on that. So you could go to File, Save As, or actually you could export it and then just export it as a PDF. And then if you save it as a PDF, it will save those clickables. So yeah, that's a great question. So let me run through a couple of other quick things I wanted to share with you. Please do add any other questions that you've got, because we've got about 5 minutes left before we wrap up, and I want to be able to answer them. Also, by the way, right as soon as we're done with this, I'm going to jump right over to PowerPoint Superpowers office hours. So that's going to be just a free time when I can answer questions and everything. So if you want to be able to join that afterwards, I'm going to put the link back in the chat, q.org/Microsoft. Okay. So the one other thing I really wanted to show you was this. I've created a template that is kind of like an infographics template. Now, if you want to have a bunch of the things just sitting there ready to go for your students, like ready for them to go put them right onto the screen without having to do a whole lot of hunting or digging or anything, this is kind of nice. And so this, by the way, you can get this template. Let me pull the link back up one more time. Here it is. You can get this template by going to ditchthattextbook.com/PowerPoint-templates. If somebody wants to drop that in the chat for me again, that would be fantastic. ditchthattextbook.com/PowerPoint-templates. And on that page, there is a template called icon boards. It's just a name that I cooked up for this kind of thing. And so the idea behind, boom, Michelle's got the link in there. Awesome. Thank you for that. So the idea behind icon boards was this. Have you ever had students try to create something for you and you want them to add images to it, or if you want them to add icons to it or whatever, and you give them 15 minutes to work on it and 10 minutes are done and you walk over to a student, you're like, hey, what are you working on? I've almost got this first picture picked out. They've been like scrolling for 10 minutes trying to find that perfect picture. You know what I'm talking about? If we can avoid that distraction and keep them on task, we might be able to get more out of our instructional minutes. And so that's why I did this. I've added a whole bunch of things that students might want to put in an infographic, and I put them around the slide in the gray space. This gray space, by the way, is kind of like the workspace. And so whenever you save the image, none of the stuff gets saved onto the image once you're done. It's just extra space around the outside. And so see, I could take this little number 1 right here. I'm going to Control D to duplicate, because remember, that's one of my favorite keyboard shortcuts. I can bring it kind of over here. I can grab an icon, again, Control D. Can you guess why I'm Control D-ing on this? It's so I keep my library of stuff up here, because if I drag this one over now, it's already on here and I can't use it again. Well, I mean, I could, but I'd have to duplicate it over here. And then I can even pull a text box in like this. Or of course you can just draw a text box in. That's just as easy. Add your text right here. You see how easy it was to create that? That took just like seconds to pull all of those things in. And then of course we can highlight everything, Control D, move it over, change the text, change the number, change the icon, and boom, we're creating infographics super fast. So if this is something that you'd like to assign to your students, give to your students so that they can make their own infographics and make it without a whole lot of time, just head over to that link that I gave you earlier. There it is. It's still in the chat. Textbook.com/PowerPoint-templates. And so then you're able to go and download that template and then send it out to your students in whatever learning management system you use, if it's Teams, if it's Canvas, or whatever. So anyway, that was another thing that I wanted to share with you real quick. I'm going to put this up on the screen real fast because I want to make sure that you remember that those free ebooks and that the free templates are available right there. And so I'm looking real quick to wrap up with any questions, and then I'm going to be done. Can the infographic be used as a drag and drop tool when students use to answer on their end? It can if they're still using it in edit mode. You see how I'm in edit mode where I can click on things and move it around? You can drag and drop things there. So that's a really good thought there. I like that, Dana. Lauren says, just checking again, if we give credit to the Noun Project, we're able to use their icons without a pro membership. Yes, you're able to download them through a Creative Commons license, and as long as you put the attribution in, you can use them for free. All right, we have covered a lot of ground here. Real quick, Dana asked one more quick question. What size screen do you normally use regularly? You can change it to really just about whatever you want. You can do the 4:3 size, you can do the 16:9 size, or even go to custom slide size, and you can make it regular paper size, which would be, here in the US is 8.5 by 11 inches. So you can change it to really whatever you want. So, all right. So I've had a blast hanging out with all of you. Thank you so much for being here. This was fun. I hope this was useful to you. Again, use those links that I gave you if you want to download some of those templates. And feel free to shoot me an email. Also, it's matt@ditchthattextbook.com. I am doing more trainings later this week. q.org/Microsoft will get you there. It's on the same place that you found this one. I'm doing some other ones this week as well. I'm actually getting ready to go do another one right now. So anyway, hope you had a great time. Thanks so much for joining this, and I'll see you on another recording.